Welcome. Welcome to City 17. Whether you chose it or it was chosen for you, it's the best city from what's left.
Half-Life is not just a game, it's a revolution. It's a project ahead of its time and still a benchmark for many developers. It's hard to overstate Half-Life's impact on gaming, as it spawned a universe of iconic games. In its first year, Half-Life 2 won 39 Game of the Year awards and sold 10 million copies, which was huge back then. Honestly, as a kid, I still call Half-Life halfway. If you call it that too, comment below. Yes, we never saw Half-Life 3, but the series' legacy lives on, and the recent Half-Life 2 RTX presentation gives hope that one day we'll see the third part. And although Half-Life 2 is still considered a game with decent graphics, plus we've seen gameplay from the new RTX version, I was still curious to recreate the initial train station location in the game engine. So let's find out how Half-Life 2 would look in 2025. I started creating a layout, and to make it accurate, I extracted the original map from the game for reference. First, I recreated the main elements of the location using primitives. There will be 3 locations: the station itself, or rather the arrival and departure zone, the waiting hall, and the corridor connecting them, as well as part of the city and industrial zones. When the main silhouette was ready, I began adding details. Using Boolean operations, I cut out window openings, then placed the windows themselves. Next, I placed pilasters and made a cornice, if you can call it that, which visually separates the lower and upper parts of the station. Then I added material to the walls, and on the very top part of the wall, I added old plaster material. Then, using metal beams, I created the cornice belt and started creating the roof layout. Next, I transferred this layout to Blender for reference and began creating the triangular truss. After the model was ready, I opened Substance to create the texture, added wear, rust and small defects, and here's what came out. Then I created a metal arch. Then I opened Unreal Engine and started placing the trusses, after which I arranged the arches. Next, I worked on the bridge. First, I added the metal structure, then the bridge itself. After that, I cut out an opening for the service door and placed it. Now it's time to work on the roof. Its main part will be covered with corrugated metal, and the remaining space will be taken by windows. I also added windows to the central wall. Then I added material for the floor. Afterwards, I placed curbs to visually mark the platform edges. I'll return to detailing this location later, but for now, I decided to work on the industrial zone part of the city outside the station. I started creating a layout. This location won't be as detailed since it's just a background. After creating a sketch from primitives, I added brick material. Then I worked on the bridge, added the bridge truss, concrete texture and supports. Next, I placed fences that enclose the railway station area. In some places, I decided to add torn chain link fences and covered these areas with corrugated metal and wooden boards. I also added fences to the bridge. Then I placed industrial buildings, added texture to the ground and started placing railway tracks. The simplest and most effective way is to use splines. For this, I created a rail blueprint and began stretching them across the scene. Then I placed residential buildings in the background. From the time I first played Half-Life to when I read George Orwell's 1984, more than 15 years passed. And when creating the video, I started delving into this universe and I became curious if the game's developers were inspired by the book. After all, there are many similarities besides the fact that both have a totalitarian regime. I went to Google and indeed many forums have analyses drawing parallels between the game and the book. If you've read the book, what do you think? Are there similarities? Write about it in the comments. Next, I started adding industrial structures to the background. Then I placed power lines and began adding various small props. Barrels, trash containers, various boxes, more barrels and containers, stones and cobblestones. Then to add more flaws, I added decals of cracks and fractures on the walls. We have a dystopia here, so the more chaos the better. Next, I added decals of stains and dirt on the walls. I also added decals of debris, small stones and dust at the junction between the floor and walls. Then I added a tactile tile decal. After that, I placed a fence. Next, I added tank cars and scattered old tires all over the area. Then I added cars to the station itself. On the opposite side, there will just be cars, and on the side where the player arrives at the station, I placed a car with a locomotive. I decided to add graffiti to the cars. A lot of graffiti. In a dystopian totalitarian world, they create an effect of protest and resistance. Next, I started adding details to the station itself. I placed benches, trash cans and seats, various boxes, luggage carts and luggage itself, as well as trash containers and a hydraulic cart. In the original game, there's a lot of trash at the station, so I decided to stick with the classic and keep this element. I added cardboard boxes and torn newspapers on the floor, empty soda cans and a lot of trash decals, as well as trash bags. Then I went to Blender to create information stands. Once the model was ready, I started texturing. I added wear and rust to the metal surface. Then I added the information to the stand. And here's the result. Next, I placed the stands at the station. Added graffiti to some of them. Then I placed a phone booth and a newspaper dispenser. I added propaganda posters and loudspeakers to the wall. Next, I placed light sources. Then I started creating the layout of the other rooms. When the main sketch was ready, I added material to the walls, visually separating the upper part with old plaster material. Then I added a cornice belt like this, which visually separates the two materials. I added it to the passage connecting the waiting area with the departure area. Next, I added tile material to the floor and finished the roof in the waiting area. Then I added a roll-up shutter to the currency exchange point. Then I added decals of stains, streaks and dirt to all the new rooms. After that, I placed gates and fences. Then I started filling the scene with details. I started with the first two rooms leading to the waiting area. I placed luggage carts in the exit light indicator, lockers, a soda machine, trash cans and trash. Next, I went to Blender to model a turnstile, just like in the game. Since the turnstile consists of many repeating parts, they can simply be cloned to save time on texturing each part, so I left it like that. Next, I transferred the model to Substance to create the texture. Once everything was ready, I went back to Blender, cloned the missing parts, and here's what I got. Then I placed the turnstile at the level and added a fence next to it. Next, I started adding details in the waiting area. I started with decals of dirt and stains. Then I placed food court tables and pasted propaganda posters on the walls. Then I opened Blender again to make an information board with train schedules. Here, I did everything the same way as with the turnstile and information stands. Next, I placed them on the wall and added wiring to the walls. The last thing I did in Blender was a fast food kiosk. It's not the most complex prop and it took literally 15 minutes to create. Then I created the texture, and here's the result. I added trash near the kiosk, crushed soda cans and food leftovers on the tables. Next, I added a few more small details. Trash containers, a notification system and clocks. And to make the location not look deserted, I added NPCs and metro cops to the scene. The last thing I had to do was a video with Breen's speech, which we hear upon arriving at the station. I decided to recreate Breen himself in MetaHuman. I found the most suitable template and started modifying it. The task was not to create an exact character, but to make him visually resemble Breen. Here's what we ended up with. It's up to you to decide who he resembles more. Write in the comments. Next, I needed to animate him so he'd move his lips to the text, but not overdo it. I didn't need super cool animation because this video will only have 2 renders. I used the LiveLink Face app. I needed to record 2 clips, one for calibration and another with the text I needed. I did the calibration, then converted the speech to animation. And here's what we got. Before I show the result, make sure to like this video, leave a comment to help it grow, and subscribe if you haven't yet.
Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll